ITV's royal correspondent Chris Shipp is with us, as well as Vanity Fair's royal editor Katie Nicholl and royal biographer Angela Levine. Good morning to all three of you. Such serious matters at hand here. Chris, here's the question, I suppose, picking up on what William said there, is the idea that had those bank statements of Earl Spencer's former head of security not actually been faked, would she have spoken out about her marriage in such a way? Because one sensed that she felt she had to have a preemptive strike against what she felt was insiders working against her.
Yeah, look, it's William's view very clearly articulated last night, and I was, very surprised when I was listening to that come into our newsroom yesterday evening. But his view very clearly is that his mother would have said different things had she been, had she known the full picture, had she not been deceived. And I was just surprised by also how he mentioned that it made his parents' relationship worse. And I think we all know in 1995 that relationship between Charles and Diana was not in a good place at all, and yet Prince William said it made it even worse. And the saddest thing he said was the fact that his mother died not knowing to the extent to which she had been deceived by Martin Bashir. We should remember, though, that the judge, Lord Dyson, in this report pointed out that Diana probably would have done an interview at some point. But I think it's not just about the fact the interview happened, it's how it was secured, and the fact that Diana probably would have said perhaps some different things had Martin Bashir not sort of fuelled her paranoia in the way that William spoke about last night.
Katie Nicholl, royal editor at Vanity Fair, good to speak to you this morning. Two events that are not entirely unrelated. We're talking about Prince William's comments on the BBC and that Panorama interview. But we've also now seen Prince Harry talk about overnight the paranoia that Diana felt during that time, the moments that led up to her death, where she was and how that affected him, and her attitudes to both the royal family and to the way she was portrayed. And they don't feel unrelated, do they, to the impact it's had on both boys' lives. There's a huge responsibility for those involved in the fakery and the cover-up, isn't there, to both the princes and the royal family, and I guess to all of us, really.
Yes, and to Earl Spencer as well, who, of course, has been at the heart of this campaign, really, to push for a second investigation into it. And I think he goes further than William went in, saying he very clearly draws a line between that interview and Diana's death. As Chris was saying, I thought it was really interesting to hear William sort of draw this comparison between that interview and the absolute breakdown of his parents' marriage. But Earl Spencer goes further than that. And I think, there's a hint of that as well, or more than a hint of that, in Harry's statement. He talks about this exploitation in the press and said it still looms large even today. You can hear that anger, that resentment, Harry seething. And I think there was no masking William's deep upset and disappointment in the BBC and its practices. So huge.
You're a journalist as well. You're a royal correspondent. You speak about this. You've worked for all sorts of organisations. What do you feel about the BBC's position and what they need to do, and how it kind of reflects on everybody?
Listen, it's not really for me to comment on what the BBC should do next. I don't represent the BBC, no. But I think this is 25 years ago, okay? You can't judge the people necessarily in the institution today on what happened 25 years ago. But I think we have to listen to what they've said. As a journalist, you have to have a moral compass. Integrity has to be at the heart of what we do, and if it's not, then that needs to come under scrutiny.
Angela, let's talk a bit about what Harry has said overnight. And many of our viewers won't have seen this because it literally came up on Apple TV overnight.
2 in the morning or something.
Yeah, 2 in the morning. There's 5 hours of this stuff. His stuff is 40 minutes of it, but it is very, very revealing. And he actually has therapy on screen. You see him having therapy, and we can see some pictures of it. Angela, what do you make of what you've heard so far? He talks about the fear that history was repeating itself, that he says, my mother was chased to her death while she was in a relationship with someone that wasn't white. It's incredibly triggering to potentially lose another woman in my life. What do you make of this after the Oprah interview with Meghan to now do this?
I think obviously feel enormous sympathy with anyone who is mentally unwell. I mean, it is, however much it's opening up, it is still heartbreaking for anyone, and they want to keep it secret. But I think Prince Harry has overcooked his goose in a way, because he's so negative about it. He comes across to me as somebody who is still very unwell, because he can't move forward. In therapy, most therapists try and help you have a bit of closure and move you on, give you something positive to think about and to aim at. But Harry seems to be stuck in this, and some of the things he said about his father, for example, he didn't have it very good to be a child, and so therefore Harry and William must have it too. I find that extremely hard to believe, because Prince Charles did his absolute best. Maybe he wasn't the best parent, but I don't know many people who are perfect parents. And I also found it very cringing to be invading his therapy session with the therapist. I watched it all, and I felt so embarrassed that he would go through this, and these gestures he had to make, and what he said, and it looked both embarrassing and a little bit phony.
Angela, we've actually got, we've already seen some of the images. You might not be able to, because you're talking directly to us into the camera, of him doing that particular form of therapy. We've also got the moment when he comments on what Prince Charles said that you just talked about. Let's have a quick look. I mean, Angela, I suppose, your comments that he is still in trauma brings to bear the fact that people who have mental health difficulties say one of the challenges is to know when to speak up. It can't always be at a place of resolution, because that is part of the opening up and the conversation that they feel is helpful for others. Chris, Angela's been critical in many ways of Harry there. Broadly, we're all going to get to see this and reflect on Prince William's statement. Both of them are clearly very hurting and passionate about it.
Yeah, look, there's a couple of points that I'll make. I think, firstly, I was surprised that Harry was sort of going over some of the ground that he'd already raised with Oprah in that, bombshell interview, as we refer to it, a couple of months ago. Because, to talk again about how his family didn't protect him, to criticise his father for saying, it was like that for me, then it's going to be like that for you. So I was a little bit surprised about that. But clearly, Harry has, a lot of things he wants to get off his chest, and he thinks that he had a very traumatic time and he needed to escape from that life, and he's now got the life, as he said in the programme, that he wanted. I think the other thing about Prince William, I say, is that I know that he doesn't want to pick a fight with the BBC. No, he wants to support public service broadcasting, which I think we'll all agree, because we work for a public service broadcaster on ITV, that that's a very important part of the media landscape. So he wants not to pick a fight with the BBC, but clearly this was an episode in the BBC's history that was significant and has now unravelled in the most dramatic and serious way. So I think there might be further implications for the BBC. For example, why did they rehire Martin Bashir as their religion editor in 2016, despite everything that had gone on in the mid-1990s? It's hard to see if heads are going to roll, though, because, Lord Hall, the former Director General, is gone. Martin Bashir stepped down from his job last week. There aren't many people at the BBC now who were in charge at the time. But I think that perhaps the biggest problem the BBC have got is whether any of the members of staff of Panorama take legal action against them for what happened in 1995 and 96.
Right, OK. Well, thank you to all three of you. Still so many questions that can be debated over both of their statements overnight.